This week on the Rental Report Review: The Glass Key, Suzanne's Career, Black Mama, White Mama, Society, Blazing Saddles.
The Glass Key, Paramount's fast-moving story of two tough guys and a beautiful girl who gives them the fight of their lives.
The Glass Key almost works. This movie really feels like a lot of very talented people working on a movie together, but not necessarily making the same movie. Well, with the exception of Veronica Lake and Alan Ladd. This is the second in a series of, I think it's 4 movies that they starred in together throughout the 1940s. I think what does work in this movie is that Alan Ladd excels at playing working class men in over their head. But I think he's better when he's playing a slightly gray good guy rather than a slightly gray, technically bad guy. I think the chemistry between Ladd and Lake is as hot as it ever is. I think the movie kind of takes it for granted that the audience already knows that going into it, and I think the film could have used with maybe a little bit more setting up their romance so that it felt like it paid off later. I give The Glass Key 3.5 stars. I think each individual element is competent to good for this era, but each of those threads kind of weaves a loose tapestry. It's a little muddled, but you can kind of understand what's going on. But the sheer magnetism between Ladd and Lake. yeah. And shout out to William Bendix doing yeoman's work with one of his classic heavies.
Je peux prendre cette chaise, mademoiselle?
It feels to me that the existentialists are maybe more naturally suited to the morality tale. I'm thinking of Ingmar Bergman, Michael Haneke, pursuing a morality tale almost like a locked room detective story. Almost like the inverse of it, where there's no way to get out without something going wrong. I've been enjoying Eric Rohmer's 6 Moral Tales so far. I'm only 2 in, obviously, granted. Suzanne's Career is a lovely little tale of 2 bourgeois university-age men seemingly taking advantage of one aspirational woman. It has all the beautiful trappings of a postmodern moral tale, where characters seem to enjoy or labor at rationalizing away their duplicity and, more importantly, their actions. I really enjoyed this movie. It's very humorous. But at 55 minutes, it's kind of an awkward length. It needed one more element. It needed one more turn. It needed to kind of play with the ideas just in one more angle, perhaps. But since he was adapting his own work, I'm assuming he was trying to be faithful to the ideas he was originally playing with. I gave Suzanne's Career 3 stars. If you're into the acerbic and cruel side of Wes Anderson and Noah Baumbach, I think you'll enjoy the sort of leisurely stroll that is Suzanne's Career.
Avec Guillaume, les choses traînaient rarement. Néanmoins, Suzanne résista ferme jusqu'au fameux soir annoncé.
I don't know where or when, but I'm pretty sure I've seen this movie.
More dangerous than those who have nothing left to lose.
If you're coming to Black Mama, White Mama looking for a race-baiting exploitation film with lots of bare breasts, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be mildly disappointed. Definitely this time, that was one of the less interesting and not really even the point of the movie. Black Mama, White Mama. I just love saying it over and over. Black Mama, White Mama. It takes place in the Philippines in the early 1970s. The Vietnam War isn't really in the foreground. The movie is much more about class. It's much more about the periphery of the capitalist colonialist project. And this time I was definitely watching it through the lens of the Filipino filmmakers actually behind the cameras and in front of the camera in a lot of this.
See, I don't like cops, and cops don't like me, so why should I help you?
10,000 reward. Women in chains.
I originally gave Black Mama, White Mama 3.5 stars, but just kind of thinking through it again, I'm bumping it up to 4 stars.
If you screw up this deal for me, I'll kill you.
There is some really great experimental editing. There's stunning photography throughout. I don't know that I've seen better exteriors in a long time, but really it just excited me for Filipino cinema. I just love how much energy is in it. It got me excited to explore more by Eddie Romero. It got me excited to dive more into Filipino cinema in general. So, come for the sleaze, stay for the anti-establishment, genre-bending action film. I try not to have any expectations coming into watching any movie, but I was somehow very primed to want to love this movie.
Beverly Hills is known as a society of wealth and privilege.
I think I had seen images of it on Instagram over the last few years. I've explored this genre relatively recently, but it just didn't quite come together for me. But even in my mild disappointment, it's still a really fun movie. It was a little tough in the beginning to figure out what tone the film was trying to strike, but once I did a little bit of Googling and found out that director Brian Yuzna was at least one-time friend with Dan O'Bannon, and they batted around the idea of this film at one point, it made a lot more sense. To kind of like mix metaphors, I think this film kind of straddles an uncanny valley between horror, EC comic, Cronenbergian body horror, John Carpenter sci-fi earnestness, and Back to the Future pop 80s teen movie. And the film also suffers a little bit in that it's Yuzna's debut feature. I think the film is maybe a little too much to marshal for a first run. All of that said, I give the film 3.5 stars. It's got a lot of really great moments, both funny and gory and sexy and weirdly fucked up, delightfully so.
In society,
there is like a 4.5 star movie in there somewhere.
Torn from the fiery pages of the mightiest annals of the West comes the supreme saga in the great tradition of frontier drama.
Francis.
I mean, what can I say about Blazing Saddles that hasn't already been said about Blazing Saddles? For some reason, it's taking me forever to watch Blazing Saddles. I've loved Mel Brooks films since I was a kid. I think it somewhat runs in my family. There's a bunch of, funny smartasses on both sides of my family. And there was a run in the 80s and 90s where I was the perfect age for Mel Brooks movies. I saw Young Frankenstein and History of the World Part 1 pretty young, and Spaceballs in the theater with my grandfather and cousins in 1987. And Robin Hood Men in Tights was one of my favorite comedies, if not one of my favorite movies, for several years. But for some reason, it's taking me forever to fill in the rest of Mel Brooks's, at least directorial, career. I wouldn't go as far as to say that Blazing Saddles is as potent today as it was when it first came out in 1974, but it's still pretty damn potent. I think it's really easy to take for granted how good this movie really is. I think it's almost taken for granted how good any Mel Brooks movie really is. I mean, the films are funny on every level. There's everything from dick and fart jokes all the way through, breaking the fourth wall in meta commentary about cinema itself, and trailblazing issues of race, class, and gender. I think if Blazing Saddles has any real faults, it might be that it doesn't go far enough. Does it pull punches? I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. What's the point of the movie? What should be the point of the movie? I think for Mel Brooks, the ultimate goal is to titillate you in your mind, your heart, and in your loins. And he's done it film after film after film. And Blazing Saddles is absolutely no exception. I give Blazing Saddles 4 stars. I'm sure I'm going to return to the film many more times, and I'm sure it's absolutely going to invade my lexicon. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on Instagram and X to see what movies I'm renting next, and pretty much everything is on my letterbox. I am going to go watch some more movies. I hope you do too. Pretty well.